Hello, everyone. Welcome to Faith and Fellowship. We're three guys based in Utah. I'm Kirk.
I'm Joel.
And I'm Lyric.
And the goal of our show is to share stories and beliefs from different people local to our area.
Our mission is to bring civil discourse and allow people who hold different faiths a platform to tell us what they believe.
The show's model consists of an interview episode and a follow-up response episode where we'll discuss the topics that were brought up with our guests in the initial interview and give our take from a biblical standpoint.
Full disclaimer, not all comments and opinions expressed by our guests represent our own opinions. Thank you guys for listening and enjoy this episode.
Hey everyone. Thanks for tuning in to this bonus episode of Faith and Fellowship. We've been having some problems with our technology the past couple weeks, and as a result, we have lost a couple episodes. But this episode that you're about to listen to was recorded with one of our guests who had told his story in 2 previous episodes. We hope to have him back on to retell his story so we can get that out to you guys. But until then, we hope you enjoy this episode right here.
All right. Welcome to this bonus episode of Faith and Fellowship. I am Pastor Kirk, pastor of artcity.church, and we're excited to bring this bonus episode to you.
You are so enthusiastic right now. This is awesome.
Well, this is great.
This is what Joel does to you. Hey, before we go any further,
okay.
This is our season finale, season 3 finale, right here.
Are we this one?
This is
I thought this was like a bonus episode.
Yeah, but like
we're gonna let the bonus episode.
Bonus episode is gonna be the end of season 3. So like,
wow, 3 seasons.
There's no
3
counsel
whole
here.
seasons of Faith and Fellowship podcast.
Real quick, because we got to get into the bonus episode because we've told it's only like 10 minutes, and I got to talk real fast. We're gonna have to talk with Joel. We're gonna let Joel talk real fast. But what makes the season? Is it a certain amount of episodes?
It is usually about 10 episodes. Our season 1 and season 2 are 10 episodes. This season is going to go about 12. But just for sake of being able to like fit topics in, because, you know, we don't want to like split a topic in the middle of a season. So this one's going about 12. But it's been 10 in the past.
So we've had...
Who set that rule for 10 episodes? Like, I've seen that on television as well. Like... particularly
Some
streaming
seasons
services,
are 12.
10 episodes is a season. What happened to like 21 episodes?
I've seen 21 too.
Well, it is different. I don't know.
Well, nowadays shows are about an hour and a half long.
Well, anyway, this is our 32nd episode.
That's
Can
crazy.
you believe that?
That's
Faith
crazy.
and Fellowship, 32 episodes. Yeah.
It's been a journey. And
if you'd like
we're
to
just getting
support what
started.
we're doing here.
We can tell.
We're just getting started.
It's made you lose your hair.
It has.
Mine too.
As if he had it before that. Let's be real here.
Hey, I did have it. There's a picture I love.
Long time ago. High school.
Oh, yeah.
I'm starting to think hair's overrated.
Oh, it is. You know what they say. Grass doesn't grow on a busy street.
That's true.
Okay. Well, this episode, really, we just want to talk about something that we mentioned in the first episode with Joel. So if you haven't...
something that we kind of talk about or bring up a lot here, but haven't gotten into detail about.
That's true.
We do talk about or bring up this topic and even poke fun at it probably a little more than we should, but...
Sometimes it needs to be, but... my story, go back and listen to that. You can listen to that on season 1. Joel's story, just a couple episodes ago, the last 2 episodes, which is great. Man, go back, listen to those episodes. Just so much good stuff about following Jesus and what does it mean to be a Christian. And we understand that we don't always just... I mean, there's more to the gospel. There's no more to the gospel than the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. But that is such a deep subject when you start getting into who the person of Jesus is. We follow him. And so I grew up an independent fundamental Baptist, okay, abbreviated IFB. I did leave the church, right, because I don't believe I was a believer. And then I came to Jesus. I came to a relationship in Jesus when I was 21, and I started loving Christ. I started loving the Bible, a lot of stuff that Joel just got through talking about. One of the things that we want to bring up in this episode, and I want to start with it because when I went to Bible college, it was a fundamental Baptist Bible college, and there was good things that I learned there. And then I came back and I started serving in our home church, the church I grew up in. The senior pastor there asked me to come back, and that was my first ministry position. I was assistant / youth / anything you wanted to be called, toilet cleaner, mow the grass, whatever. And
Run the Sunday morning slides and be the unpaid intern.
you have no clue.
Senior global pastor.
You have no clue. But anyway, yes, which is good. It is good. And I learned, and what it taught me was servant leadership.
Yeah.
Don't ever be thinking that you're above doing anything.
That's right.
And because you want, and that could translate to the business world, but we don't have time for that. But what happened was I went to a seminary. Joel went to Southeastern. He was like the crown jewel of Cary, Raleigh. I went to the second seminary. I went to Shepherd's
Always
Theological
steps behind
Seminary.
them, huh?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, But anyway, I went to a seminary where I feel like God directed me to go. And it was even before that, I started studying and thinking through these things that I was being taught in the church, that was not just in the local church I was serving in, but the circles of the fundamental movement that can be considered legalistic. And so when I started going through that and started understanding that some of that was not biblical, but it was extra biblical, I had questions.
So just real fast for our listeners, let's define legalism.
And we did this, I think, a couple episodes ago. I think Joel described it really well. It's anything that what you're saying is it's the relationship with God. Your relationship with God is based off of your works. Now, to be fair, the independent fundamental Baptist movement would say that we are saved by grace through faith in Jesus. Okay? We are saved through faith.
We can stop here. If you
You can just shut the door.
Oh.
Yeah, he's just changing filters.
Got you.
We are saved through grace, by grace, through faith. But the problem with that is, how do you maintain that relationship? So legalism is not just about how you're going to get in favor with God, but how are you going to stay in favor
I think
with
favor
God?
is the key word there. It's not necessarily, they wouldn't say, oh, you earn your salvation, but it's about staying in his favor, gaining his favor.
Right, or drawing closer to him. Like, okay, you got Jesus. How are you going to get more of Jesus? Mm-hmm. Well, if I'm going to get more of Jesus, and then there's a list of rules you're going to follow. Mm-hmm. And even then, we would say, okay, yeah, I understand that if I'm in Jesus, we talked about this, how sensitivity to sin, but sin is defined in the Bible, right? And there's this idea that there are things in the Bible that aren't clearly defined. We brought up alcohol. Yep. As much as I understand it, and I did the binge drinking before coming to Christ. Alcohol in the Bible is never listed as a sin. Mm-hmm. Drunkenness is, but not alcohol. Sex is not a sin, but fornication and adultery is. So there are these ideas. But legalism would come out in the IFB as saying, okay, because there are certain things on movies that aren't right, you should never go to the movie theater. Never. And if you go to the movie theater and we find out you went to the movie theater, you're in trouble.
Is that really? They were like, don't go to movie theaters.
Yes.
Doesn't matter what you're seeing.
In the extremes, it's you're in trouble and we're going to talk about it from the pulpit. Like,
absolutely.
And a lot of times it leads, and I think, Kirk probably experienced this more than I did because he was in it longer than me, or maybe not longer than me.
Always steps behind him.
I think Kirk experienced it more as an adult than I did.
Yeah.
Even though, God, once I started walking with the Lord, I had past connections as a child that allowed me to then be in relationship and around the independent Baptist movement and give me some insight and some experience with them. Kirk was a little more immersed in that experience than I was.
And I think where we split ways, and I was thinking about this before, both of our families went to Faith Baptist Church in Roxborough. Remember that?
Yep.
Okay.
Years ago.
I think we split there where when something happened, the pastor left and the new pastor came and my family didn't care for that or something, and I was young, and we started going to Five Forks. Okay, that's the church I'm telling you that I went back to, right?
Yeah, my family went to Five Forks too.
From
my dad
there?
and mom. My grandma and grandpa went to Faith. My mom and dad went to Five Forks. And I think they were going to Five Forks when your parents
started
when
going.
Your mom started going to Five Forks. Yeah, and so while at Five Forks then, I think I was about 5 years old, so I really don't remember it. Well, I was actually younger than that. But then at Five Forks, they split into another church, which is called Grace Baptist Church, which is where my dad and mom went and helped plant work. That's not really a plant, but helped start that church.
I did not
and got
know
it
that.
started. Yes, that's how all that developed.
Wow. Oh, that could be a whole nother episode.
Oh, yes, it is. Trust me, I got a lot of stories from that. But anyway, yeah, go ahead.
So what else could we say? Well, some of the major ones, and we won't get into any of them, because it's not just about legalism, it's about bad theology.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So when we say the words bibliology, we mean we're going to study the Bible. We're going to study how we got the Bible. We're going to study the inspiration of the Bible. God gave us the Bible in Hebrew, Aramaic, a little bit, Greek, right? Old Testament, New Testament. He did not give us the Bible in English. So anybody that has their Bible in their language, somebody translated that. Somebody took the Hebrew, and somebody took the Greek, and they translated to that, and you can add Latin into that because there's a whole history called church history of how all that happened. Well, the independent Baptists would say there's a spectrum that you can be on, the spectrum that's all the way, we would say all the way to the left. I believe all this is wrong, but all the way to the left, you would say there was what was a double inspiration. So not only did God give us the Bible in Hebrew and Greek, he inspired it in English in the Bible, the King James Bible, and it actually trumps the Hebrew and the Greek. I don't need to know Greek. I don't need to know Hebrew. If you have the Bible in the King James and you have an 1860-something Webster dictionary.
That's like 200 years after the King James came out.
But you got to have that dictionary. I don't know why. That dictionary, because words change. So they thought that was the closest to the dictionary. So if you had a concordance, we talked about a concordance, you had that 1828 whatever Webster dictionary, and you had a King James English Bible, you don't need anything else.
So if I have the Bible in Russian and it's translated from the Greek and Aramaic, it is not as good as the King James English.
Right.
Spectrum, right? We're talking about the radical to the left. The radical to the left. There aren't many of them left because it is so crazy. They would say, and you would need to go to Russia and teach Russia English so that they could read the King James. Now that is radical. As you start coming back to the spectrum, you say, okay, no, that's too radical. Understand that Russian has their own Bible, Spanish, the Mexico or Hispanic countries have their own Bible, and Spanish, Greek, so forth, whatever. I'm not Greek, but well, there is a Greek Bible, but you know what I mean. Whatever nationalities there are. But for the English-speaking people, which would include, okay, this is the Bible college I went to. They still stand to this. This is other colleges. For the English-speaking people, it's the King James. Mm-hmm. You don't have other modern translators.
That came before the King James.
Not the Geneva.
No, they would not.
Not Tinsdale. Geneva. New Testament translation was everything's built up. See, right away, you're throwing your brain away. Because if you just start studying church history and how even the King James came about, it was not the first English translation.
Right.
There are passages in the Psalms that specifically... I can't throw them off the top of my head, that they use out of context to say, yeah, we understand that the Bible is not, the King James Bible is not the first translation because God used 7 translations to make it perfect. Now it's perfect. We don't need another one, the 8th one. I'm being taught this stuff, okay? And I'm not being taught this is an opinion. I'm being taught this is it. Yep. And if you waver from this, you're a heretic.
Yep.
Well, I've heard, and this would probably be a bit more extreme left, but I've heard you're the Antichrist. I mean, straight up, you know, if you waver from the King James, if you preach the ESV from the pulpit, you're the Antichrist.
Well, and say, I would see this as, so are fundamental independent Baptists thinking they are the only true church?
No, they would not
They
say
would not
that.
go that far.
They would not
Because
say
they
that.
wouldn't say. It
But-
seems like the ESV, right, English Standard Version, is what most churches use. I'd say, at least in my experience with Presbyterians. So they would
It's
say,
becoming more popular.
Right.
It is a newer translation. I mean, it's been around, what, I think 2000?
so they would say, like,
Yeah.
you're
Like that.
you're still a correct church as long as you're using the King James. Doesn't matter what denomination you are.
Yeah, no. You're not going to see the Independent Baptist. Maybe if you're going to frame it that way,
Yeah.
the Independent Baptist would say they wouldn't use the word new church, the only church or the real
Right.
church, but they would say they're pretty close to what it needs to be. You need, because there's things that's going to
Yeah.
describe it, right? Categories. So your King James. You're going to be premillennial, pre-tribulational, dispensational in your eschatology. You're not going to be anything else. I didn't even know there was anything else till I started going to seminary or readings from other books. I'm like, you're telling me there's a pre-meal, historical pre-meal, or there's an a-meal, or
kinda
there's a post-meal?
Yeah, it kind of comes down to this, that, they divide fellowship. They may not define whether that is whether you're a Christian or whether that church is a body of Christ per
Yeah.
se, but they divide fellowship and say that we cannot fellowship with you or we cannot fellowship with that church because they do not use the King James Version. You cannot preach at my church because you don't use the King James Version. You don't believe in dispensationalism. Well, then we can't fellowship with you. There's no fellowship between us, which is unbiblical.
Now, I have a question on this. I'm going to ask you guys because you both come from that. And I think this is a little bit similarity with me growing up, LDS Mormon. And I watch a lot of independent fundamental Baptist pastors. I get kind of a kick out of it, I'll be honest with you. They get some pretty wacky sermons. But it seems like...
I got one for you.
I was about to say, can I talk about the one we watched the other night on the air?
Well, let him get his point across.
But it seems like there's something that independent fundamental Baptists really, really have something. They just don't like Catholics. Well, is this something that you guys ever witnessed?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, I noticed it seems like all these independent fundamental Baptist pastors I watch, the main thing they target is Catholics. Catholics. And in the LDS church, when I was growing up, like, the religion that was seen as the worst of all the other untrue churches was the Catholics. Mm-hmm. I don't know if this is just an independent fundamental Baptist thing. I'm just curious. Maybe.
So yeah, they would definitely not affirm the Catholic Church.
It's
They
more
would
than
say
that.
Go ahead.
There are people to this day that are premillennial, pre-tribulational, that take the book of Revelation, and when it talks about the harlot, when it talks about that's the Catholic Church,
the Catholic Church for them.
Antichrist, people still believe that the Antichrist is going to be the Pope.
It's not the Orthodox Church. It's not the Presbyterians and
No.
the Pentecost. It's the
But
Catholics.
strangely enough,
Yeah.
there's a lot of similarities between the Catholic Church and the Independent Baptist movement.
Yeah, I would agree.
And without getting into all the details, I mean, on the local level, the pastor's the Pope.
Very true.
That is another
That's
thing.
another
He's
marker.
the
Yeah.
authority. He's the one that makes the decisions, and if you don't like it, you can get out.
Yeah, it's. I mean, here we've talked about this before on the podcast. Here we're a congregational church where it's not a system of hierarchy, but most fundamental Baptist churches, it's the pastor is the quote unquote head of the church. And man, I mean,
His word
you can
is
find
good as the gospel,
some
it seems.
entertaining but sad clips online
It is.
about even some of these pastors talking to the congregation and forcing them to do stuff and talking to them in ways that
Now,
are
to
abusive.
Very
be fair,
unloving. I think Kirk may be about to say this. To be fair, every independent Baptist pastor is not like that.
Right.
True,
So
and I would go on to that's true, very true. It needs to be said. The other thing is, every one of them would say their polity is congregational. Mm-hmm. Now, what that means, though, and I would even say with here, because right now I am the only pastor, right? I'm a single pastor, which when you look at it theologically, I think multiple elders is wise it needs to happen. And we're praying, we're training, we're hoping to have that, right? But there is a qualifications. There's all these things we look at.
Joel.
Yeah, we're praying. Joel just says, "Hey, man, come on, let's go.
We need you, man."
But with that being said, I have set up accountability, which Joel is part of that. So many of you may know, or not many of you don't know, but Joel and I meet on a weekly basis in Zoom call. I'm telling him about what's going on here. I'm asking him for advice. We're praying. It's more personal too. It's like, well, what's going on in your life? But we also have a fellowship of churches right here that we're part of, that First Baptist Church of Provo and Christ Fellowship, that we speaking to each other's lives. I'm not doing the Lone Ranger thing here. I'm being held, and even to the congregation, there should be an idea as if we're teaching the Bible faithfully, we're making people we're making disciples, and they understand the Bible. So if anything ever comes in the pulpit that's wrong, including me, the people out there are saying, hold on a second.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, this is not biblical. You did your job really well, Kirk. You taught us how to read the Bible and study. Now you're saying something off the wall. What are you talking about here? And I always want to be open to that. And in the Fundamental Baptist, majority of people, when you went to the pastor and you said, hey, hold on a second, I've been studying the Bible for a long time too, and you just said something, and I don't know if that's biblical, you're going to get a response of, I'm the man of God.
Yeah, almost. I mean, if you're going to correlate it with LDS religion, it's almost like, oh, I'm the prophet.
Yeah.
I'm bringing new revelation, you know, and maybe they won't bring it as new revelation, but it's the same idea under a different guise.
Yeah, don't question it.
Yes.
If you, reaching back to what Kirk was talking about a few minutes ago, is the various views of the end times, of eschatology, right? Without going into every little different area there, if you're questioning whether the rapture actually occurs or not, then you may not know the Lord. Like, you may really just need to know Christ. That's how, deep that can go.
And then usually the attitude is, just going off of your example, if somebody's questioning that, the attitude isn't, oh, let's help them learn so that they can know. The attitude is, oh, you just need to get out of the church. You're not walking with the Lord. Either you're walking with the Lord or
your
you
questions
aren't.
on the shelf.
Listen to what I say.
Yep.
Listen to what I say.
Do what
if
I
you're
say, and
questioning,
you'll be
get out.
okay. You'll be all right.
Now, question. So, how does a church service, a typical Sunday at a fundamental independent Baptist church, how does that differ from, say, your church in Roxborough or our church in Springville? How's the service different?
There's similarities. So what's similar? They get together, they gather, they sing. Most of them, this is going to be another category. You sing hymns in the hymn book. Some of this is progressing, because eventually you are going to progress with the culture.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Well, you see the LDS church doing it. You see,
it's okay in some ways. We're just not the biblical doctrines that we're not moving. We're never going to move with the culture when it comes to the divinity of Christ, being saved by grace through faith, right? But if we're going to sing songs, we don't have to have a hymn book. We put our words on a screen. Well, dude.
And do they have TVs in their churches?
No, not the church that I'm part of, that I was part of up to this day. They don't have it. And they never would have. They would have looked at that as being liberal, progressive.
And usually there's limited instruments as well. Like, they're not, at least in my experience, there's not a drum or a guitar.
Well, that's going to be cultural, depending on where you do. We had a bass guitar.
Okay.
We didn't have drums. Drums were of the devil.
Yep.
For sure. But we had an organ.
And this is according to what? What is determining this doctrine?
The pastor.
The pastor.
The pastor.
Or the church. The church, too, is being raised in that.
Yeah.
So they're going to be...
So if pastor's I don't like drums, we're not doing drums.
I think I would add a more essential dividing point there. Like, while I get those things, you may have a church, even a church that's not an independent affiliated church, that may have some of those similarities with music, having a hard time getting away from, just hymns, no screen type thing. But yet here's what I believe is a more essential difference than what I would call kind of a faithful Bible believing church. like Art City and some others, is expositional preaching.
That's true.
Because at the end of the day, yes, we should. At the end of the day, I can go in a church. And of course, it's not all about me, but you can go in a church and have old music, no screen, and you can worship. And the pastor or one of the pastors get up and expositorily preach the scriptures.
And real fast, just for our listeners,
worship.
Can you define exegetically and expository?
Yeah, so really quick, exegetical is just a term that literally means to draw the meaning from the text. I'm drawing it out of the text. The adverse term is eisegesis, where I'm reading into the text something that may or may not be there. So I'm reading into it. I would characterize much of independent Baptist preaching, not all, but much of it in my experience, and I've listened to a lot of it, as eisegesis. Taking a text and just kind of developing whatever creative thought you want out of it. Exegesis is pulling it out. Expositional, it really defines more of the way that it is communicated, but it really is saying I'm taking a paragraph and I'm going to deliver this text in such a way that it maintains the authorial intent. In other words, what the original author intended this meaning from the text, and then I'm going to, if you will, develop it in such a way that that is culturally relative to the local church while maintaining the essential truth of the text.
Yeah.
So this is very important. Hold your question because this is very important. What he just said was key to what I think legalism is. If I'm part of a church and the body of believers that's there, which would include the pastor, you want to have unison. And because you're going to have leadership and you're not going to have everybody, we've seen it here, you're not have everybody on page about everything you want to do, but this is what the church culture is. If that is hymns and hymn books and just a piano, but the Bible is being exposited and the Bible is being taught faithfully, that's a healthy church, right? But if a church is over here and chooses to use screens, maybe a mixture of hymns and contemporary hymns or songs, and use a guitar or drums and do that, and the Bible is being exposited, and that's a healthy church. Legalism is saying, no matter what it is, I'm doing it this way, and you are to do it this way. And if you don't do it this way,
you're not being faithful.
You're not a healthy church. And so you think about these categories that we've mentioned that are grayish, because when you exegete the Bible, when you try to get what the Bible is saying and read it and understand it, they don't speak to it all about it. Movies.
Yeah.
Women wearing pants. These are things that are being said.
Drinking alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
I recently had a conversation with my daughter that was one I can't say I ever wanted to have. And she asked me that very question. Dad, does the Bible tell us not to drink alcohol? And I said, it doesn't say not to drink alcohol. I'd be a lie to you if I said, I'll tell you why I don't drink. But no, the scriptures, teach us not to be drunk. And the reason for that is because we can't think sober-minded about the gospel. We can't be clear-minded.
We can't have our guard up against the devil.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I had to explain all that to her. And she said, so when I get 21, is it wrong for me to drink a beer? I said, only you can define that between you and the Lord.
There is wisdom and foolishness that comes into that, and case-specific with each person. But
Then she said, are you going to buy me a beer when I turn 21? And I said, absolutely not.
So my question's, this is just such a fascinating subject. I've really been looking at these independent Baptist churches lately, because especially on social media, it seems like they kind of just finally figured out how to use social media. And so like if you have,
kind of like Kirk has just figured out how to cut your hair.
No, he's not there yet.
I feel like if you have discernment as a Christian and you're able to go see, okay, what are these other religions saying, discernment from the Bible, right? Great. So I look at what all these other religions are saying just because I want to kind of keep up with the culture, know what's going on in the world amongst these other religions. And so I get a lot of independent Baptist stuff that pops up on my social media. There's this pastor, I guess you could say, but kind of a disgraced pastor. His name's Stephen Anderson. I don't know if you guys have heard of him or not. So he's leading this movement called the New Independent Fundamental Baptist Church. and
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, and so very, very legalistic. And one of the things I noticed compared to, and what do you guys think is the best terminology to define? You have independent fundamental Baptist, and then what do you call the Baptists that aren't independent fundamental Baptist? What would you call them? Just Baptist? Southern Baptist?
I mean, you would have to go back and look at the actual history of the Baptists. At one time, you had American Baptists. Mm-hmm. It was denominational. You had Southern Baptists had been around for a very long time. That when the Southern Baptists, anyway, that's a whole, to answer your question. If there are a whole lot, you've got Free Will Baptist. So you have to look at things from an idea of a denomination is defined by its doctrinal statement. What is it believing? A lot of those are going to have similarities. Some of them are going to maybe we've talked about theological triage.
Yeah.
You're going to have a second or third tier doctrine that's not as important as that first tier that people may disagree on. And then churches may come together and say, well, this is what we would like. And you're going to have those type of denominations that form because of, we would say it, I hate to say freedom, but it's the idea that people believe, right? What they're reading the Bible and coming out of the Bible understanding what it believes.
Yep.
Well, and so
what it teaches.
No, that's great. So I guess for the sake of this analogy, I'm going to just lump independent Baptists into one category and non-independent Baptists in another category. So it seems like, and I'm not going to say this is a fact, this is all subjective here, but it seems like when I'm watching these sermons from these independent Baptist preachers, and then I'm watching sermons from non-independent Baptist preachers, it seems like almost every sermon I watch from the independent side, it's not that they're preaching through a passage. It is, today I'm going to tell you about something I believe, and we're going to kind of nitpick parts out of it. So this pastor, Stephen Anderson, he did a whole sermon on men having long hair. Men having long hair is an absolute sin and an abomination to the Lord. Mm-hmm. And so he would kind of nitpick out of these passages to prove his whole point. Having long hair is a sin if you're a male, right? And then when I watch our church or other Baptist churches preach that are non-independent, it's like, okay, well, today we're going to preach through a chapter in the Bible. Mm-hmm. Next week we're going to preach through this chapter in the Bible.
Which is the exact definition of exegesis.
Right.
You're hitting at the heart, really, of how they come to those conclusions, Lyric, and what sets them apart is it becomes, for lack of a better word, opinionated. So I see this text. So for instance, in Deuteronomy, where you have these texts about women not dressing like men, they interpret that to mean women should not wear pants. Well, strangely enough, men didn't wear pants
either.
In the Old Testament.
Men were wearing skirts.
Either. But so
again, common sense is just out the window.
What begins to happen is when you're not preaching or teaching exegetically and expositionally, you're not drawing from that text the gospel truth in light of the greater message of the canon of Scripture. All of Scripture, you're seeing that text and you're reading into it your opinion, your theology, your doctrine, and then you're preaching from that to make people believe what you believe rather than what the text.
And I have a prime example, and I want to play it.
Go ahead.
So
I want to play it.
Is this what you played the other day? So real fast, I will say we're going to end on this prime example. We're going to wrap things up. This episode was
we'll have to
about
do another one.
But I want to say, if you're listening with younger kids, if you're maybe sensitive to this topic, end it here. You're not going to miss much. Maybe listen by yourself. This is a bit out there.
And the fact that he's got to say that from a preacher in a pulpit.
Yeah.
This is concerning.
I am not an angry person, but nothing fires me up more than hearing things like this.
But I think it's suitable.
Yeah,
it's suitable. Here we go.
I told my wife that this is the kind of preaching we need. I told my wife, I said, Mama, when we go to Vision Forge, to the outlet malls, when you go uptown here, we'll go to sit at the parking lot at the outlet mall, the mall here. I said, you watch it. I said, count them. You'll find more women going to have shorts on than you will with pants and dresses put together. So I sat there. I just want to be sure. But I sat there some time ago for, I don't know who's out in the, I guess it must have been some of the family. My wife don't go shopping now.
Can barely
and I
talk.
sat there in my car. I thought, I want to see if that's right. And I counted. Try that. You'll find more women go in those places with shorts than you will women with pants and dresses put together. Try it. If you got time, try it. Have your boy go up there and try it. Just watch for it. Have your girl go up there and watch for it. And you know, I used to say this. I haven't said this in a long time. You ready? I said, if you dress like that and you get raped and I'm on the jury, he's going to go free. Wow. Now, you don't like, do you? I'm right, though. I can't help you don't like it. I'm right. Because, you know, a man's a man. A man's a man. When I was a boy, 80 years ago, I was raised in Martinsville, Virginia, partly known Moxfield, North Carolina. Listen, I don't even remember women wearing anything but dresses back then. Well, anyway, I want you to go home depressed tonight. I'd rather go home encouraged, but I want you to go home on to serve God.
Was that Joe Biden or a preacher? I mean, like, both were incoherent, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
That sadly, that does capture and characterize a lot.
he needs to be
of the preaching.
investigated.
And
That's
if we had time, I would share one for a well-known evangelist / pastor in the Independent Baptist movement.
How long is it? I think we might.
In all seriousness, it will break your heart to hear him say what he says.
We need to wrap up. Why don't we do another one? Even if and I've thought about this before. Maybe Joel's really busy, but you know he's with us. He's been with us for some time, and but maybe what we can do is have you Zoom in.
Sure.
Or
I'd love to.
Or honestly, man, if we can get together before you leave again, maybe we can do another one. But we could.
Yeah, my schedule's packed the next couple of days.
You could just move out here.
You could move out here,
elder. I mean,
yeah.
What is all
You could start an independent Baptist church out here. Church of Joel.
It will be the rival church to Art City Church.
Joel's Baptist.
Anyway,
Better
guys,
art
thanks
church.
for listening. Thanks for tuning in. This is just a topic that I think we're all passionate about in maybe slightly different ways, but it's important to communicate these things and talk about how to discern these things because, like we talk about all the time, our focus is Jesus.
Amen.
And man, that's what we want to preach from the rooftops. That's what we want to emphasize. So, man, if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to check out the church. We'd be happy to talk to you. We'd be happy to have you here. But thanks for listening. This is big.
Yep. We'll see you next time. Hey. Yeah. Can we have some silence?
Yeah, please. You're loud over there with the writing.
Yeah, stop writing, man. I can hear you.